Welcome to the Kendo and Italia podcast in this English language version. Enjoy listening.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a really specific set of sources and plunging right into the highly disciplined world of Kendo competition.
Yeah, these sources give us an incredible, almost like a surgical view of the protocols. For competitors, for referees, everyone involved, we're not just looking at the big scoring moves, we're really analyzing the geometry of how you enter the space, the exact requirements for your gear, even what happens if the fight needs to stop for something, seemingly mundane, like a splintered bamboo sword. So our mission today is to cut through all that density and give you the essential knowledge. What does it actually mean to be in order for a Kendo match? It's a deep dive into discipline, right down to the millimeter.
Right, and what hits you immediately is that Kendo competition is just governed by this absolute unwavering demand for precision and respect.
Yeah.
It's kind of unique because your techno prep, your equipment, and your mental state are, they're scrutinized equally. The level of detail expected before you even step onto the shiai-jo, the competition area, it's intense. And that preparation, that's really where we have to start. Okay, let's unpack this ritual of readiness then. Before a match even kicks off, your protective armor, the bogu, it has to be perfect. And it's not just about wearing it right, is it? There's a very specific labeling rule for the tare, that apron part.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Every competitor needs what's called a na-fuda. It's basically a name badge, and it goes on the front of the tare. The sources are crystal clear. This info is mandatory, and it has to be legible. Needs to show the kendoka's name, and then depending on the event, either their dojo name, their city, or their nation.
So it's compliance first, then maybe a little personal flair second. The sources do mention that while those details are absolutely mandatory, you can optionally add things like your name in katakana, maybe a dojo symbol or your nation's flag. It's a very controlled identity expression.
And moving from the armor to the weapon itself, the shinai, the bamboo sword, the verification process there is huge, mostly about safety. This isn't just a quick glance, it's a real examination of its integrity, often done rapidly right before the match.
Right, and it sounds like the competitors expected to have checked this themselves, like multiple times before they even get to the official check.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it like a pilot's pre-flight checklist.
No.
First, you check the bamboo staves themselves, any damage, splinters, anything that could injure the opponent is a no-go. Then you look at the parts holding it together. The nakayui, that's the leather strap around the staves, it has to be incredibly tight. Non-sliding, because if that moves, the whole structure of the shinai is compromised.
So the bamboo itself is only half of it. What about the leather parts, the housing?
Yeah, those need to be pristine too. So checking the tsugagawa, which is the handle cover, and the sakigawa, the leather tip, for any breaks or openings. And running along the top is the tsuru, the string defining the back edge. It must be taut, no slack. Finally, the tsuba, the handguard, needs to be seated correctly right at the top of the handle, the tuka. This whole granular check is really to prevent a refusal, or worse, needing a replacement right in the middle of the fight.
And that level of detail, it doesn't stop once the gear is okayed. The moment you step onto the mat, the entry sequence itself is incredibly specific, almost like geometrical. The sources really stress this. Competitors have to enter the shiai-jo simultaneously, but only after the 3 referees are in position, flags at their sides. No signal needed, you just wait for them.
Yeah, the visual symmetry at the start is really key there. It's not some disorganized rush onto the floor. It's a mutual, respectful start to the engagement.
And the movement itself is dictated too. You advance, arms naturally down by your sides, taking exactly 3 normal steps. That brings you to the kaishisen, the starting line. Once you stop there, you execute a bow. And it has to be approximately 30 degrees. I mean, that level of calibration sounds exhausting just thinking about it.
Well, it's the very definition of intentional movement, isn't it? After that first bow, there's the handling of the shinai. You bring it to your side into a position called taito. Your left hand holds the sword, and it must be in contact with your hip.
Okay, and the sources specify what's incorrect here too, right? Like you can't hold your hand away from your body, pretending to draw a real sword from a scabbard, and definitely no resting your thumb on the tsuba, the guard. Why so rigid about these hand placements?
It's all about maintaining the correct posture. It embodies alertness, respect, rather than, some theatrical imitation of old sword drawing. It prepares the mind. So after taito, you take the final 3 steps up to the kaishisen. And it's on that 3rd step the shinai is drawn forward. It's not really an unsheathing action. Then you go down into the sankyo position.
Sankyo being that deep ceremonial kind of crouch they take right before the action starts.
Exactly. And while you're in sankyo, you've got to keep an erect back, no bouncing on the legs, and you absolutely must wait for the central referee's start signal. Attacking, or even just looking like you're about to attack from that crouch, strictly forbidden. And remember, during this whole entry, the side referees, the fukushin, they're watching the opponent's gear again, checking fasteners, colored tapes. The match is under scrutiny way before the first strike.
Okay, let's shift into the actual combat then, and the rules around interruptions. Why is the rule so strict? Competitors can't just ask for a stop unless it's justified cause. Is that to stop people using it strategically, like for a timeout?
It absolutely is.
Yeah,
the rule is basically designed to prevent tactical breaks disguised as, oh, my gear's loose. You can only request a stop if there's a genuine reason, danger to safety, maybe armor actually came loose or the shinai splintered. If you try an unauthorized interruption request, you can be penalized. And importantly, the competitor has to tell the central referee, the shushin, exactly why they need to stop. The ref doesn't ask what's wrong. You state the reason.
And if a stop is granted, let's say you genuinely need a new shinai, the procedure for fixing things is also super formal. Both competitors salute, standing at the kaishi-sen, then they retreat 5 steps. But crucially, they're not supposed to leave the competition area, right? Even with broken gear.
That's the key rule, isn't it? Maintaining the kind of sanctity of the shiai-jo. The opponent who's waiting, they stay inside the area, either in sankyo or kneeling formally in seiza. And if a shinai needs replacing, it's preferred that an assistant hands the new one over, just to prevent the competitor from actually crossing that boundary. You really shouldn't leave the space unless absolutely necessary. It shows how much value they place on keeping the bout flowing.
Now, when the referee issues commands mid-fight, there are a couple of main ones dictating immediate action. Yami means stop, right?
Right. Yami means stop, return immediately to the kaishi-sen, resume guard. No delay.
Okay. And the other one? Wakore.
Wakore means separate. You immediately move away from each other until you reach the distance the referee indicates. Usually that's where the tips of your shinai are about 20 centimeters apart. If someone delays or resists separating, the ref will stop the whole fight and restart you both right from the center line.
We definitely need to talk about the close quarters fighting. Kia tsuba-zeri-ai, that's where the guards are touching.
Yes, exactly. Tsuba-zeri-ai. The guards, the tsuba, have to be touching, roughly at stomach height. But importantly, the shinai themselves need to be kept sufficiently open to the right. This gives the referee a clear view. And this is where penalties can come in pretty quick, usually to prevent stalling tactics. You can get penalized for just hanging out in tsuba-zeri-ai on the yura side, that's the back, or non-advantageous side. Or another one is keeping your right hand resting up on the tsuba-moto, that's the part of the shinai just above the guard. If the central ref suspects something like this, they'll often call for a gogi, a consultation with the other judges.
Right. It seems really clear the rules discourage anything that's just about leverage or pushing rather than, actual striking technique.
Exactly. There are other things explicitly listed as prohibited, unsportsmanlike actions too, like leaning your shinai on the opponent's shoulders just to push them or throw them off balance, or insistently poking the opponent with the tip of the shinai, even if it's on their armor, and slamming the tip of your shinai down onto the ground. These all just show a lack of respect for the martial art aspect.
There was one technical detail in the sources that really speaks volumes about the art itself. The hasuji. The direction of the sword edge.
Ah, yes, the hasuji. This is critical. The shinai, even though it's bamboo, is meant to simulate a razor-sharp katana, so you have to strike with the correct edge orientation. If a competitor is seen using a rotated shinai, basically hitting with the side or flat, the shushin stops the fight and gives one clear warning, just one. If that mistake happens again, any subsequent actions by that competitor are immediately invalid. Doesn't matter where they hit or how good it looked otherwise. That's how fundamental correct form is.
Let's pivot to scoring them, because this is where the requirements get, almost philosophical, it seems. The sources really hammer home that scoring a valid ipponiful point, it's made up of 3 essential phases. And if any one phase is missing, the whole attack is invalid. Can you break down those 3 phases for us?
Absolutely. It's fundamental. Okay, phase 1 is the preparatory phase. This means you have to create the genuine opportunity to strike. You have to earn that opening. It can't just be luck. Phase 2 is the execution itself, exploiting that opening you created and performing the actual strike with technical correctness, the right target, the right part of the shinai, enough force. But the phase that really separates Kendo from just, say, fencing is phase 3, control and return to guard. This is called zanshin.
Zanshin. So that's not just like standing there after you hit. It's more active than that.
Precisely. It's the remaining spirit or lingering awareness. It shows control, mental continuity, and your immediate readiness to defend against a counter or even launch a follow-up strike if necessary. If you land a technically perfect strike, but then you stumble or you turn your back immediately or just generally lose that sense of control and alertness, the point is nullified. No zanshin, no ippon.
Wow. Okay, and this complexity gets even more layered when we look at Renzoku Waza. Sequential techniques, right? Like a coat men attack, hitting the wrist, coat, then immediately the head men.
Ah yes, Renzoku Waza. This is probably the most challenging area for referees to judge consistently. Remember, koke is the wrist, men is the head. In a Renzoku Waza, the whole combination is judged essentially as one single action. So if the first strike, the kote, is technically good, but the second strike, the men, is flawed, maybe it slides off or lacks power or hits incorrectly, then the ippon should not be awarded just for the good kote. The last target struck must be valid, or yuko.
Okay, this raises what seems like a central paradox. If zanshin, that third phase showing control after the strike, is required for every valid strike, how can the first strike in a two-part sequence ever be valid? Because the competitor immediately moves into the second strike, right? They don't pause to show zanshin after the first hit.
That is the absolute crux of judging it. You're right. The first attack in a true Renzoku Waza inherently lacks its own individual zanshin because that display of control is deliberately interrupted to flow into the second strike. So referees have to be really sophisticated here. They need to distinguish between a seamless, intentional Renzoku Waza, where the zanshin is sort of carried through the entire fluid movement and demonstrated at the very end, and what might just be two distinct, quick, successive attacks fired off separately. If they judge it as two separate strikes, then yes, the first one lacks zanshin and would be disqualified even if it landed well. It's about the intent and flow of the whole sequence.
Which perfectly explains why arbitration, judging, demands such absolute unity among the referees. And that's achieved through the gogi, the consultation, right? When the shushin, the central ref, calls for gogi, both competitors have to salute, retreat 5 steps, and just wait for the decision.
Exactly. And that consultation needs to be lightning fast. It's not meant to be a long debate. It's a rapid expression of opinions without hesitation. No wishy-washy stuff like, well, I think maybe, or kind of seem like. The 3 judges, the turna, they answer in salida basically as a single unified body.
That unity is critical then. If a team manager tries to contest a decision later, the shushin reports the unified decision our decision is, and never reveals who thought what among the individual judges. And the decision made after that collective gogi, it generally cannot be contested unless there was a really clear, direct misapplication of a specific rule, not just a judgment call.
Right. So finally, let's just wrap up with the actual end sequence of the match. It's the shushin's command, yami, that officially determines the end, not the sound of the timer hitting 0. The referee has to be careful, though, to call yami immediately upon hearing the chronometrist's signal if the time is up.
Okay, but what if something happens like a valid ippon is scored or someone goes out of bounds at the exact same instant the time runs out?
Yeah, there's a very precise protocol for that scenario. If an action that determines outcome occurs simultaneously with the time expiring, the referee first declares the outcome of that action, awards the ippon, or signals the out-of-bounds penalty. Then the timer signals the end immediately after the restart command would have been given for that action. So basically, the action itself always takes precedence over the clock at that final moment.
Got it. So once the end is finally signaled, the competitors return immediately to the Kaishi Sun line. They wait for the final outcome declaration. Then they descend into Sankyo, they resheathe the shinai, they rise, retreat 5 steps again without exiting the area, and they salute each other.
And notice the distinction there. They salute each other, their opponent, but they do not salute the referees at the very end of the match. They just keep retreating until they exit the shiai-jo. And the final, very fitting rule from the sources. Any kind of greetings, encouragements, even pats on the back with a teammate who's about to come on, that has to happen absolutely outside the shiai-jo. That boundary between the formal competition space and everything else is, well, it's concrete.
So after digging through all this, what does this deep dive into the rulebook really mean for you, the listener, or the practitioner?
I think it means that understanding this level of rules comprehension, it isn't secondary. It's just as fundamental as your technical skill. The sheer rigor embedded in Kendo competitions, from the geometry of just stepping onto the mat to the incredibly exacting definition of zanshin, it reveals that the competitive spirit here is completely inseparable from discipline and sticking to detailed form. It's really not enough to just hit the target. You have to hit it correctly, in the right way, with the right spirit. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this knowledge is vital for competitors at pretty much any level, really. High-level championships demand near-perfect compliance, obviously. But even at local events, knowing this stuff helps you avoid frustrating snags, unnecessary interruptions. It's actually a competitive advantage just to know the rules inside out.
Which leaves us with this final, maybe provocative thought for you to consider. Given the sheer complexity we've seen just in judging something like Renzo Kawaza, where a fundamental requirement like zanshin is intentionally sort of suspended or carried through for the overall action to succeed, how much deeper do we need to look into the rules of other sports to truly understand the core intent behind what makes a valid score? And maybe how often do we actually miss the deep discipline embedded right there in the rulebook? Something to think about.
Thank you for listening to this podcast.
Kendo, shiai-jo Italia, il podcast.